Okay, hello everyone. It is day 3 of Coffee and Curriculum. Today I have the absolutely amazing and lovely Natalia Kennedy, all the way from Maryland. And we are just so excited to have you here. And we are going to be talking about serving success, implementing and evaluating curriculum. So this is going to be a very interesting one. I know a lot of our audience has been very interested to hear what we have to say for this session. So for this session, we are going to be talking about strategies for implementing the curriculum at various educational levels, monitoring and assessing curriculum effectiveness, adapting curriculum based on student feedback and assessment data, addressing challenges and barriers to successful curriculum implementation, like 504 and IEP plans, best practices for continuous improvement and evaluation. So just a little bit about Natalia. Natalia Kennedy is a seasoned higher educational professional with over 10 years of experience. In her current role as Title III Program Director for Guided Pathways, Approach to Student Success, she brings well-rounded professional knowledge with faculty experience and extensive knowledge of higher education's various components, such as financial aid, enrollment services, bursar, admissions, academic advisement, and so on. Cognizant of each department's unique dynamics and how all work in unison to serve the students, Natalia has served as a director of financial aid for the University System of Maryland, where she has worked extensively with parents and students to meet their financial aid goals. With a passion for helping students, Natalia has demonstrated a track record of serving on several committees to help financially and academically advocate for students. She thrives in dynamic environments where she can collaborate with cross-functional teams to tackle complex challenges and drive success. In addition to working with students on an enrollment services level, Natalia also served as an adjunct professor teaching criminal justice and College 101 for over 5 years. Natalia holds a master's degree in instructional technology and criminal justice and is currently working on her EDD in higher education leadership. When not working, Natalia loves to cook, bake, hang out with friends, and enjoy spending time with her family. Well, thank you for coming on here. Absolutely amazing. And I can't wait to rack your brain with some of these questions that I know that other people would be appreciative as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started with the first question.
Absolutely.
What strategies have you found most effective for implementing curriculum in, it could be elementary, middle, or high school settings, and also higher education?
Well, first, I want to start off by saying thank you so much for having me. It really is a pleasure. And when you posted this, I was super excited. I started off at first, and I was like, let's see. But throughout the course and just kind of collaborating with you and just seeing your vision on this, it's really, really, really exciting. So thank you so much for having me and just like sharing all the information that I possibly can. But to your question about just curriculum and different aspects of education, we kind of have to understand that every aspect of education is kind of like a building stone or a stepping stone in the sense that we're using one to develop the other, so to speak. Just starting off with the elementary school level, simple hands-on and interactive learning, and that can be engagement, that could be something where there is diverse learning, and just making sure that there's hands-on engagement, especially with elementary school students. Developing those interactive lessons will be able to build up that kind of curriculum. Also, integrated learning, where you have something called like theme units, where it depends on like whether it's art or science or social studies, you gear that towards a certain project and or theme and make that with real life connections. So you have integrated learning. When the last point is routine and structure, and I think at that age, you want to be able, especially in elementary school, a consistent schedule, core pretty much core and clear expectations of what the schedule is. So establishing a routine, establishing a schedule, it provides them a sense of security and safety in that they're knowing what they're doing in the elementary school level. And also when you communicate clear expectations of what you need from them, they're able to understand that. So you kind of build that up in the elementary school level. One of the things that we also have to keep in mind too is that when we're talking about our students, we're not talking about like 2 or 3 students in a classroom. We're really talking about like at least 10 students in the classroom with different learning capabilities. So it's not, people really have to understand that it's not every student learns the same. And where you have a student that is hands-on, you may not have a student that's more, you know, visual, or they're more audible, and, you know, things of that nature. So we have to, it really is hard for the teacher to develop curriculum in a way where each student is getting the proper necessities of learning that is applicable to them. So it's not an easy task. But I think once you have, and also, and there's a lot to, we could go into a rabbit hole of, you know, teachers having that support too in developing that curriculum, or even just getting a curriculum and realizing that this is the curriculum that's being used. And although it's not the best developed curriculum, learning how to build off of that curriculum to suit the needs of the students. So it's very much, we have to really understand that when we're talking about this, we're talking about this on a blanket scale, but keeping in mind that we have 10 different personalities in the classroom, right? And they're not adults, they're still kids. So they're still like, you know, was it like Finding Nemo, where it's like, you know,
Yes.
going in different directions and everybody's in different directions.
Right.
So we have to really like keep that in mind. When they get to, again, I'm in higher education, but when we get into higher education, sometimes we see those gaps, right? Because they're not filled. And if they're not filled, they come into the college setting and we can automatically see those gaps. So for example, and each level is different. So elementary is different from middle is different from high school, and you can see those gaps forming. So when they get to high school, these gaps are now becoming repetitive, and it's something hard for them to break out of. So for example, when we talk about the middle school, we want to make sure that we're getting some project-based learning going. So what that means is that doing a lot of critical thinking, using kind of like real life scenarios, and just kind of working through projects, whether in an individual setting or in a group setting, and just getting that critical thinking, because now we're training them to go into high school. So we want to make sure that those project-based learning plans are important and that they're critical, because we want, one, for them to learn how to do it on their own, but also to collaborate with other students. And it makes it more cohesive and more relevant for the time, so that they're able to understand what they're doing. So we want to be able to fill in those gaps by building those things up, and having those learning bases being built up. I know for high school, I really want to talk about high school as well. We have different things, and I did take some notes here, just kind of bear with me with that. But some of the things, 3 pointers that I really kind of wrote down too is, we want to make sure they're college and career ready. So whether that looks like highlighting their interests, whether it be in career or whether it's just regular interests. And what I always say is that, especially to teachers, figure out what your students' interests are, just regular interests, because most of the time those regular interests can catapult them into their career. Sometimes people, they love art, but they also love criminal justice. And they're like, wait, I can't do two at the same time. Sure, you can. You can be an artist for the government, right? You can be an artist for the forensic team. So figure out what people have more than one interest. And what I've learned is that you need to be able to figure out their interests, but also figure out what they want to do, and see if you can blend and work that together. Another thing that we do with high school is technology integration. So when you are going off to college, there are going to be so many technology platforms that are going to be used across the board. So we want to make sure that we're giving that technology literacy, if that makes sense, so that students are able to grab. And I think in this day and age, that's not a problem.
Yeah, right.
Like, we're in 2024. I do not think that the technology is a problem, but I do think that introducing them to the software, whether it be Outlook, using your email or school email, making sure that they're reading their school emails. Geez Louise.
No.
So that's one of the things. And also personalized learning. This is very important, and we tie that into time management because a lot of high school students do not know how to really take that time management and learn their own um, uh, study skills, study habits. So you'd be surprised that when students are in high school and or college, they still don't know what type of study habit is the best habit for them. They're
Mm.
still struggling with that. They're still struggling with time management. So really using like a lot of pace learning, flexible learning, but also understanding just kind of a lot of data and assessment for instruction and just making sure that they understand what they're reading, what they're learning, how to assess, but also doing that on their own time. I think that's also very important because even I will say for me, it took me, and the transition from high school to college is really drastic. And it took me some time to really figure out what is my learning style because I've been so uh, kind of structured to, okay, this is the schedule. You know, even in high school, the bell goes off at a certain time. This class is at this time. Free period. When you get to college, there's nothing
It's
like that. It's
two
completely
different worlds.
it's two different worlds. And this is where, when you talk about the gap, we start to see the gap. When you get to
Mhm.
higher education, we start to see you don't have proper time management skills. What are your interests? You don't know? Okay, maybe you should start to know. And this is where so these are just some of the things that I could just kind of jot it down so people can kind of rack their brains to figure out how to move forward in that. And a lot of districts, they struggle because they don't have the money to support their teachers for the professional development that they need. And this requires some teachers to look outside of the box or outside to get other professional development. And I do urge teachers, if and when you have the time, not during the summer though, but if and when you do have the time, um, to really seek for professional development. Even there are free ones out there, but even to seek for some type of professional development outside of what maybe the district is hosting, because sometimes, again, in certain school districts, they don't have the funds to support for the professional development that these teachers need in order to build upon the curriculum. So it's not just a one track minded or a one track answer kind of thing. These things like topple down. So
Mhm.
I completely understand. It's rough, but I understand.
Oh yeah, it's definitely hard, and I know for those who are probably watching is just like, yeah, it is hard. I always think like what can what can happen moving forward. And this is more so for district leaders and superintendents and curriculum developers. Where can we allow them to have space um to think about these things that we're talking about right now
Mhm,
and looking at how to be problem solvers before our teachers and see
mhm,
what they need and the support that we can give them.
mhm.
Um, it's just I think it's time to start looking at it in that lens as well.
Yeah,
And like you said, the professional developments definitely help. It's just a matter of allowing them to have space to take time to
time.
digest what they're receiving when it comes to that information because it's a
I
lot,
think
it's a lot to chew.
it's a lot. And I think just the last point here, we could move forward because I don't want to take up
Mhm.
too much time.
No,
But
no, you're fine.
it's this hefty. It's really hefty. And I know it trickles down to some of the other questions too. But and one thing I know is that some schools probably do this, some may not, but before school starts or a week or two before school starts, having that faculty staff development week and really superintendents and professionals and administrators really pouring into your teachers during that week, giving them the ability to fix up their classrooms and take times to, just do what they need to do. But on the other hand, on the other end, really giving them that professional development, even if it's half day professional development for the entire week, they have that to build upon so that when they are trying to do their curriculum or adjust their curriculum, they're able to remember those pointers. So really just using that week before, a week and a half before, to really have a professional development week, or really have some type of and incorporate that with some fun, some games, some get to know you, some, it doesn't always have to be so, paper in hand. Just get
Mhm.
to know, especially if there's new faculty or if there are new teachers coming on board, really coming together, because it really is supporting one another in this endeavor. So it's very important, again, like you said, for superintendents, administrators, to really take that time, while they're fixing up their classrooms, but also saying, hey, let's see if we can build some professional development so we can enhance the learning for our students.
Absolutely. And that's a great way, I guess, to go into, looking at the next question is
Mhm.
how do you measure the effectiveness of a newly implemented curriculum?
Um, so what I'm going to start from small to large, or elementary going up. Um, we want to first focus on the fundamental skills. So we want to take a look at developing core skills such as reading, writing, math. We want to make sure that we're, again, doing those hands-on learning activities to engage the learners. We're doing play-based learning. So especially in those early years, we want to make sure that the learning is enjoyable for them. We want to build, again, a structure of routine. We also want to do the integrated learning and moving that forward so we can implement those. That's how the implementation process looks a little bit different throughout the levels. It's kind of the same as the first question. Again, making sure that there's structure, making sure that there's a daily schedule. For middle students, there's usually a transitional focus. So we are bridging elementary school and high school together. So we're kind of leaving the elementary school, taking those concepts, and then we're also trying to train them up into high school. So we're kind of using that bridge path, focusing what they learned from elementary and just start to build upon that. Another thing we want to do is, when we're in the middle school right now, we increase the subject specialization. So now we're learning about different teachers and different classroom and different subjects. And we're trying to make sure that there's more coordination and collaboration amongst our teachers. And this is where in the middle school where the brain is really working. They are really, that preteen teen, especially that preteen right in here, they're really,
Yes.
really working. So we want to make sure that in that aspect, the critical thinking and the problem solving, we want to make sure that that is highly developed during that period of time. And this is where, because they have different subjects, they're deepening their knowledge into those particular subjects. Again, we're talking about project-based learning. Just like project-based learning is kind of like, it's the same thing like the play-based learning, but with the play-based learning, it's more in elementary school, it's more hands-on activities. The project-based learning is more so much what are real life things happening, and using that to critical think and turn into a project. So it's kind of like the next step up with that. And
Right.
also development de developing, excuse me, developing study and organizational skills. That's where we start to teaching them time management, making sure that they're equipped for the demands of high school, because every time gets a little bit faster, gets a little bit faster. Every level gets a little bit faster. So this is how we're just trying to really implement those things. And again, it's kind of the same thing as the first question. With high school, it's all about technology integration, again, college and career readiness, the specialization in the curriculum, getting deeper, mastering those subjects. So when you talk about mastering, you're talking about AP English, AP Math. That's where you start to see the difference between students that are great in math and science and kind of pull away and bring them to a higher level, that's where you start to see the separation where you have kids that are learning at different rates. You start to pull them away, not so much in elementary school and middle school. They're still learning the same concept, and that's why for teachers, it's a little bit harder to kind of navigate everybody in the classroom. But when you start to get into high school and you start to see, wow, this student is really excelling in sciences and math, then that's where you start to see the separation where a lot of students take AP math, AP English, AP science, or the other way around where they take AP English because they're good with writing and journaling and things of that nature. So that's where you start to see the specialization and just really cultivating on those particular skills, and also blended learning. You want to be able to make sure that that is important. A lot of online, but face-to-face learning happens during high school. We're talking about now after COVID. We've never had any online. We probably had online um, I know college courses, but not so much. I didn't hear anything about high school having online anything. So a lot of this information, I'll say face to face and online, it's because we're talking about after COVID now. So really capitalizing on that blended face to face learning and also online learning, because some classes when you get to college do look like that. They do look asynchronous. They do look like this
Right.
face to face. They do look like it's hybrid. So we want to make sure that students are aware that depending on the schedule and depending what they choose, they need to be able to try to be flexible in both areas. So yeah.
Right. And many people may um not realize that, or they may realize it, but it's a good reminder of, to hear that. And I think it's very important. And then this next question kind of ties into that is what tools or methods do you use, or do you know, to track student progress and curriculum impact?
So I'm gonna just do about three. I think I have three. I took a deep breath because it's a lot.
That's
Um, I have more than three, but let's see where we can kind of taper off in that. So the first thing I want to talk about is the student performance and assessment data. That's really important too. When you're talking about what is it? The tools or the effectiveness? Which one?
the tools or methods to track the student progress.
Okay. So um you could do standardized testing that's been around for ages. And we know that's used to just kind of test students' skills and knowledge. I did hear something recently that they're starting to get a uh, let go of certain standardized tests because it's not measuring what the students are capable of educationally. And just, a student can really do really well in the classroom, and then they take a standardized test and not do so well. So they're starting to really take a look at the data and assessment from that and realize that students are really not great. That doesn't measure if they really are smart or not. Formative assessments we can use just to monitor students' progress and understanding through that curriculum. And also summative assessments, which is pretty much the end of the unit, end of the year assessments, just making sure as a whole what they're good at, and just measuring their learning effectiveness and curriculum effectiveness. Um, One of the things that I really um, would like for teachers to start doing, if they haven't started doing it yet, is student engagement and feedback. I think we do that a lot I want to say we do that a lot in college. I don't remember doing that in high school, but I do remember doing that in college, where at the end of like a course, you take, how do you like the course? We should definitely start doing that in elementary. And it doesn't have to look like college. It can look completely different, because one thing about these elementary students, and especially middle school, they're honest. They're going to tell you what
Yep.
works, what doesn't work. Engage their students in that aspect, it will do a world of a difference, because then they're able to meet students' needs. So we're talking about surveys and questionnaires. Again, we're not giving a college survey to a middle school student or elementary school student. We can take those same play-by-play activities, hands-on activities, and use it as a learning tool for our elementary school students. And that way we can get the answers that we really need. Hey, Sarah, Johnny, is this, how did this help? What color did you like? Do you prefer doing this activity in the morning, or do you prefer doing it in the afternoon after lunch? How do you feel? Asking those questions are data assessment questions. They may not be to the degree of a college student, but it's the same question that will give you the answers that you need. So classroom observation, focus groups. You can hold focus groups with your students, have in-depth conversations, and the insight. One thing that I purposely do when I'm teaching my students is I'll ask them a question, and I'll ask them a real open-ended question, probably controversial. And one student will answer. And then I was like, all right, anybody else? And somebody else will answer. And you can see somebody else start to feel a little uncomfortable, and they'll answer. And then after a while, I just kind of step back and I just let everybody talk.
Right.
Because then it opens up a dialogue, and then people then I gotta, sometimes people get really emotional. They start, their voices start to raise, and then I gotta be like, all right, guys, calm down. But after 5 minutes, I'm no longer speaking. Everybody else is having dialogue. And in that dialogue, you can get to see what works and what doesn't. I do that all the time. I really do not like to hear myself talk a lot, especially in the classroom, because one, my throat hurts, but I want to hear what they have to say.
Right.
And how I teach, and again, I know it's different for the K through 12, but it can work in 9 through 12, but more so in the collegiate level, is I'll pose a question or I'll teach my curriculum, but I give space, because in that conversation is learning. And in that conversation, I can able to say, okay, this is something that they like to do. Okay, they like they like to have this group learning. I can be able to pick how I can handle my students as far as the best learning for them. And most of the times when I do those tests or essays, they draw back to the conversations that they had as a group and use that in their paper or use that in their tests as examples, which leads me to believe that they're able to grasp the conversation, or they're able to grasp the information better when they were having that one-on-one and group dialogue, as opposed to me just spilling it off the board. So
Right.
these are some of the things, that tools that I kind of, it's a trick, but at the same time, it helps both people. It helps myself, but it also helps our students. Teacher feedback, professional development. So teacher surveys, professional development outcomes, teacher collaboration. Those are some things that, and again, teachers, I know you're going to watch this and be like, who has time for that? I know. I don't want to feel like, that I'm telling them that you should have time. I know that throughout the day, it's hard, and giving that extra time is even harder, but I do pose this to a lot of our superintendents, a lot of our administrators, as you said, Kavina, because give them the space, even if it's a week before school starts, give our students, and at the end of the school year, in the middle of the school year, use those teacher assessments in the beginning, in the middle, and towards the end. Do those surveys so that you're able to see where the strengths are in your teachers, but also where they need that support. Professional development, we talked about that earlier, really taking some time to, even people can develop their own professional development, just based on the curriculum that they're teaching. And the teacher collaboration, that's very important as well. Just a few other things, data and reporting. I know there's a lot of data analytical tools. I do have some in my notes further down that I will share later on in this conversation. Learning objectives, skill development, making sure that there's critical thinking, problem solving, targeting assessments, pre and post implementation data. That's always important too when we're talking about our curriculum development, student achievement and engagement, continuous improvement cycles. So continuously doing these, review and adjust. That's one of the biggest things. So just because it's not broken doesn't mean I can't review it. Does, you know, and just try and make it better. And I'm not saying changing it, but I'm just saying, what can we do better here? Pilot
Right.
programs, making sure that there's new curriculum, if there is new curriculum coming out, evaluating the assessment of that curriculum. What I do not advise, and I know this happens, I'm talking to my superintendents and administrators.
Mhm.
I will clear my throat. I do not advise you, strongly do not advise you to see a new curriculum and replace it with the existing curriculum. Please don't do that. For one of many reasons, without the consultation of your teachers. We love our administrators and we love our superintendents, but you are not on the front lines of teaching these students. So what happens is this is a way to really get together and to be as effective as possible for our students. Please consult your teachers before replacing the curriculum if the curriculum needs to be replaced. Because what happens is we're in a curriculum that's actually working. We have our teachers that are spending time developing and learning all 10 of our students and more of our students and giving them the base. And then what happens is a new curriculum comes out, and I know the excitement of the curriculum, and sometimes it's pulled from us just blindly. And then even mid-school year, we have to kind of relearn something
Yeah.
in the middle of the school year. And it can be devastating not only to the teachers, but also to the students. Because if we as teachers have to, you know, switch really quick, imagine our students who are one already in a schedule that we have set for them, already have consistency. Now we have to kind of, you know, stir the pot. And sometimes it's not, sometimes even Department of Education requires it. And I think when you have something as a Department of Education requiring a curriculum change, we have to make sure that we're working as a team and a unit to come together and say, okay, this is out of our hands. This is something that we need to do. Let's see how we can come together and better work together as professional development, assess this and things of that nature. So superintendents, if it's not needed, and administrators and higher ups, if it's not needed, I really suggest that you consult, you know, teachers who are on the front line teaching our students, educating our students, and asking them, please review this curriculum. Is this something that you think that we need? If so, you know, let us know what are different areas. We may not need the whole curriculum, but there are certain parts in that curriculum where we can expound on to make certain subjects better. So if we don't need the whole curriculum, we can take parts of it. So those are just really some tools and things that people can use and our teachers can use to really assess our students and assess the curriculum and how they're gathering and retaining the curriculum.
Well, I want to go back real quick to what you said about the feedbacks, the student feedbacks, because I know in college, when I was in college, we had the envelope, and then you know this, you had
Somebody
to
put the paper in the
everybody had
envelope,
to put the paper, and then
and
you
you
have
had
to
to
take it, and the teacher it has to,
sit
the professor has
outside
to
or they
leave the
left.
room, and then we had to do it, and then they take it and drop it off, you
Yeah.
know, to whoever. But now it's all online, you know, and it's very easy to go boop, 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 and just kind of submit it. But what I told my students is that if you don't take that feedback seriously, the issues are going to happen to your nieces and nephews and kids and family members and friends. It's going to keep happening.
Right.
I said, so it has nothing to do with me taking something, because I know a lot of students think that even though it's anonymous, if I tell the truth, I might get in trouble. And
Mhm.
there's that issue that I think education has created of not a safe space for students to
Correct.
vocally say what they need to say so that way they can receive the help that they need when it comes to their learning.
Yeah.
So I tell them, like, make sure that you are taking that seriously. If
Yeah.
this was not a good semester and there was a certain thing, you need to say that. Or what can
Right.
be better? You have to say it. I don't know if it was like a respect thing, like we don't need them to have we're the adults, so we need to
Yeah.
say what. Oh, ask
No.
the third grader, ask the fifth grader, ask the middle schooler, what did you think of the school year?
Yeah.
And we don't ask them.
I don't remember.
No one's ever
Ever.
asked me
No, I don't
how was the
remember.
classes this year in, like, ninth, 10th grade.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
No one
wasn't until
ever.
college where they asked me, but then from grades K through 12, no one's asked me. Now I'm supposed to tell you what I think. I don't even know what I'm supposed to put down. It was good, I guess, and then you just fill it out, and that's it.
It touches so many points because when you ask your middle schooler that question, we're going back to that critical thinking part where you're teaching them to really critical think. Like these things
Exactly.
really do connect. We don't
Mhm.
see it, but they really do connect. And we're teaching them to actually sit down, critical think, and say, what is it that I loved about this semester? What is it that I didn't like about this semester? What do I think that I can improve on? What are some ideas that I have? Because you know, we fail to incorporate our younger students because we think that because we are teaching them, they really don't know much, but in turns they can teach us a lot. And sometimes
Absolutely.
we need to break out of that structure. They're the ones that are learning it. So we need to be able to make sure we're accommodating them in how they learn it. And sometimes it's just being older and thinking that, we're in a structure and because we're older, we know certain things, but we need to be able to understand, again, like I said, asking the third grader and the fifth grader in their own way, did you like this? Did you
Right.
not like this? That is
Right.
an assessment.
Right.
Believe it or
Yeah.
not. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is an assessment. Although it may not look like in college when we put the paper in the envelope, right? Or
Right.
to click online now, but
Right.
asking them, did you like these colors? Did you like the Thanksgiving, paper mache that you made?
Right. Right.
Did you did, and they're honest. They will tell you, I did not like it. Or
Yeah.
yeah, this is fun. Can we do this again? So yeah, that people don't understand. Those are also assessments, and those are also ways to get students at that young age to start critical thinking, to drive them into the next stages of their education.
Absolutely. I would love to sit down with superintendents and administrators and district leaders and curriculum developers and say we need to come up with some sort of like assessment like that and just ask them, like, okay, here are the things that we did in the curriculum for our fourth graders. Now let's go back and just ask them, like, okay, hey, listen, and not have the teachers do it, like
Mm,
maybe well, include the teachers definitely, but I also think having someone who was not in the classroom 24/7 to hear their responses maybe and just be like, oh really, I didn't really think about it like that, or just,
mhm.
I would love to sit down with them and just say, let's come up with some sort of, you know um plan to ask these students these questions, because I
Yeah.
just think that's just so, I literally never thought about that until you
Yeah,
said it.
it's really important because then you'll be able to, on different levels, just really just gearing the education and the learning to the students.
Right.
Yeah, it's really important. I think it's important because it
I
helps
think it would
helps them.
shift education. I really do. It would
Absolutely.
shift, and you'll see a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And just keeping those um one of the pointers that I had down that I didn't mention is really just, I think it's long-term assessment where you're really keeping those they say data you keep data for at least 3 years, 3 to 4 years. if you want a good assessment or evaluation. So really keeping that data for at least 3 to 4 years and housing it in places where, you know, you do data. I know Google has data assessments and all these extra stuff, but really just having that and housing that information and seeing the trend of those assessments really will help.
Absolutely. And kind of like time just is never on our side. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna need I always say this, but I'm like, I'm gonna need a part two with you for sure.
No, I know.
Because I'm like, oh my gosh. Because what you're saying is you're hitting on so many things, I think that people really needed to hear. And kind of following up with what we were talking about, what common challenges um have you faced maybe in the past when implementing a new curriculum, particularly regarding 504 and IEP plans? I do want to talk about
Oh,
those plans for sure.
just
Well, even that, and maybe even how do you adjust the curriculum to meet the needs of students with 504 and IEP plans? I just want to talk about kind of like those two things.
absolutely. So again, I just have some pointers here.
You're
I'm
fine. You're
always writing down
fine.
some pointers.
You're fine.
Um, One of the common challenges and that we can talk about is ensuring accessibility. Um, with that particular challenge is making sure that the new curriculum is accessible to all students with disabilities, including those with physical disabilities, sensory impairments, cognitive disabilities. We want to make sure that it's accessible. And some solutions for this, but just a blanketed solution for this is using the universal design for learning plan. And that principle really creates a flexibility in the curriculum because you can able to tap into, I would say, everybody's disability and they get a chance to learn that. And you can customize to the diverse needs of our students. So whether it be audio, visual, tangible, you provide multiple materials in those particular formats. Another thing I wanted to just have noted here is aligning accommodations and modifications. So the challenge with that is aligning curriculum requirements with specific accommodations. When you're outlining the 504 plans and the IEPs, making sure that you're putting that together for those particular students. And how we can work together in that is I put here collaborate closely with special education staff because they're working with the students. So we want to be able as teachers to come together, I think sometimes daily. That's a daily or weekly, depending on how your school operates, and really integrate those required accommodations and put those modifications into the lesson plan for those students. Like I said, using the universal design learning plan, and then making sure that there are regular updates, reviewing those plans, ensuring that they're aligning with the curriculum as well. Training teachers, training and support for teachers is the next one, because we want to make sure that with every new curriculum that comes out, especially people with 504 IEP plans, we have to be on top of it. These kids are a little bit more sensitive. Their learning skills are a little bit more delicate. We need to be able to, they're a little bit, the beauty about students like that is that you have to make sure that we're accommodating them, but they're also like sponges. So they get it. So we have to make sure that everything is a little bit more precise when it comes to them, because we want to make sure that they're getting the proper information. Because once we actually teach that information, we want to make sure that they hold on to it. They hold on to it tight.
Right.
They get it, and they don't let it
Right.
go. So it's not like, our regular students, and I don't like calling them regular students, but
Right.
our students that are on a different learning track, let's just say that.
Right.
Because I feel like all students, there's no difference, you know what I mean? So students that may be on a different learning track, when they learn something, they can also unlearn it as quickly. But when we're talking about students in these 504 plans or IEP
Right.
plans, um, once they learn it and they hold on to it. So we want to make sure we're doing a good job with that. So training and support for our teachers when the new curriculum comes out, meeting with special education teachers and our regular teachers and them learning that together. And I know there's not enough time in the day, but we have to make sure with these students, the teachers are equipped. And sometimes, in certain schools, they don't really have special education teachers. So the teachers that are teaching our students that are on a regular curriculum are also the teachers that are teaching students with the disabilities, which is one unfair. But we know that that is more of a district kind of thing. When we get into
Right.
if we want to go down a rabbit hole, it's deeper than that, and we completely understand
Yeah.
that.
Right.
But um, again, just making sure that if there is just one teacher in the classroom doing both, giving them the training and the support to make sure that they can teach both types of lessons, and that our students, both students, are getting the learning that they need. So again, providing instruction, inclusive practices for 504 IEP plans,
Right.
resource availability, making sure that there are resources to accommodate these students and also accommodate the teachers. A lot of the
Right.
times we train them and then it's out the door. We want to make
Right.
sure the resources remain continuous and up to date, and that our teachers are getting those on a regular basis, because what happens is they fall behind, the students fall behind.
Mm.
Uh, Again, this is not another rabbit hole that sometimes, and I know like teachers probably on here talking about, yeah, but we don't have this, we don't have that. And I completely understand that, because a lot of this has to do with budgeting, and a lot of it
Mhm.
has to do with district, and a lot of it has to do with just getting the technology. Some districts may get certain technology that other districts may not get. And it's unfortunate.
Mhm.
But these are a lot of blanket things that I'm providing so that teachers in their particular district, they can use the resources that they currently have to modify their curriculum. So that's why a lot of this is just very blanket, because I don't know, this everybody's different. Every district is different and what they have and what they don't have. But really just if and I'm talking, this point I'm making to administrators and superintendents within that district, if you have that the funds, allocate some money in the budget for our IEP students and our students that are on a different track than our regular curriculum students, because these are the resources that we're talking about, continuous resources, really picking resources that are yearly subscriptions that always come out with material, fresh material, whether it be newsletters or different ways to approach our students with our special accommodations. That
Right.
makes things a lot better. You want me to stop here because I got more?
No, that's I kind of want to touch upon something you were saying, and I'm definitely getting ahead of myself for tomorrow when we're going to be
Mhm,
talking about collaborating and building
mhm,
communities
mhm,
when it comes to curriculum building. But two things. One, working with educators and teachers who specialize in working with students with special needs, I think is very, very important to be very mindful and aware of, because then, of course, like the theme of this is bridging those gaps, not to
mhm,
fix necessarily a problem, but just to say, like, what can we do better to help the students and
mhm,
also the teachers who are teaching these students.
mhm.
So I think partnering and collaborating with special needs teachers is so important. Paraprofessionals, you know what
Yeah.
I mean, co-teachers,
Mhm,
anything like that. And then the second thing that you mentioned that I was like, that's interesting, is it made me think about districts working with their local universities to see what are some
mhm,
resources or professional development or trainings or workshops or things like that where financially the need may be able to get filled, and maybe partnering. And that's the whole point of why coffee curriculum was so special to me, is because we're looking at all levels of education.
mhm,
We're not
mhm.
just looking at higher ed, and separating it from K through 12. I
Correct.
feel like if there was more of a districts working with their higher ed institutions and seeing how we can help teachers in that department, and then there may be some
Mhm.
resources that higher ed have that K through 12 may not receive in some cases.
Correct. Mhm.
Um, because higher ed is a different type of working organization than it is a school district. But
Correct.
for those watching, take that into consideration when you're going back for August or September, or whenever, to think about that collaboration process. And if you're joining with us tomorrow, you'll hear more about how we're going to be looking at collaboration. But Natalia, you really touched upon two big things with that.
I
Really.
will say this.
Mhm.
Also keep in mind that if I'm gonna take you one step deeper into that thought.
Mhm.
Most higher ed colleges have Office of Disabilities or
Right,
students cater to students with disabilities.
right.
Now, also remember, especially in the community colleges,
Mhm.
they open their doors to a lot of training, workforce development, classes, things of that nature. If you are a superintendent or administrator and you're taking that week before or 2 weeks before school as a professional development, contact your local community college. And that way you can get in there with your teachers, you can book a room, and the two of you can collaborate and say, this is what we're seeing on a K through 12 end. What are you seeing on a higher educational end? Because more than likely, the students that are with these disabilities and impairments are moving off to college, right? And they have to be able to address those. So what happens is you're coming to the table and you're collaborating with both higher education and the K through 12 sector, remembering that higher education, we also have department for disability students, hearing impaired, visually impaired students. We have to cater to those students as well. Again, talk to your local colleges, but more so your community colleges, because they're more likely to open doors and actually say, yeah, we would like to have that connection or that community, because it is community college. We're more likely to have those
What are
connections.
some key issues that contribute to the lack of curriculum in the Black and Brown community? And what are some initiatives we as educators and educational resource providers can bring to bring awareness and solutions?
Systematic inequalities,
Hmm.
language barriers, parental involvement,
Hmm.
um,
Accessibility.
accessibility, because let's be honest, a lot of our Black and Brown communities that do have students that struggle in the disabilities that we recently talked about don't really get the services that they need for their
Right.
education to move forward. So
Right.
that is actually one of them.
Right.
Um, those are the ones that I have for right now.
Yeah, and I'm
Those are
even
some of the challenges. Because when we
that's
talk about the systematic inequalities, we're talking about funding disparities. We're talking about segregation, because I'm going to be honest, that does exist. Certain parents, I've seen it in the news. I remember this one African American woman, she put her kid in school, lied about the area code that she lived in, and I think she got like they arrested her for it or something like that, simply because it happened years ago, pre-COVID, but simply because she wanted her kid to get a better education in a better school district. So
wow.
when we talk about segregation, we're talking about residential segregation, school district segregation. We all know when you're young and carefree, it doesn't matter where you live, but when you start to settle down, you get married and you have kids, you want to move to a good school district, right?
Mm.
So it in that aspect, that does come up. When you talk about that, language barriers, as we know, people coming from different countries, it's hard for them to just understand, especially what we're dealing with in 2024, with a lot of people coming in and just, trying to send their kids to school, and kids going back to school, adult learners trying to go back to school. There is a language barrier in that, where it does, there are some boundaries and some barriers, and also parental involvement. Especially, this is another rabbit hole. I paused because I felt myself mentally going down the rabbit hole. But when we talk about, again, single family homes, whether it be single mom, single parent dad, or single parent mom, going through those parental involvement is because they're working 2 or 3 or 4 jobs just to make ends meet. So not because they don't want to spend time with their children, or not because they don't want to engage, especially educationally, with their children. It's hard because they're trying to actually put food on the table and clothes on their backs. And the only way to do that is by going to work, or giving them a good education by going to work to pay for that. So the involvement of the parent is not because, oh, they're absent or they're out or whatever. It's because they're
Right,
trying to take
right.
care of the home and be in the home.
They're
uh,
doing their best.
they're doing their best. So those are just some of the things that um I can think of with challenges off the top of my head, as far
Right.
as in the Black and Brown community.
And I think too, definitely, because I'm like, oh, time, I'm looking at the time, but I do want to still touch upon this a little bit, because I think that I think because
I see your head like turning too.
oh my gosh, it is. And I have to like stop. I have to stop myself, because I will go down that rabbit hole with you, honestly.
Yeah,
Especially
we
since,
could.
like, we've built a rapport with each other now
Right.
over the past, like, month or so. So now I feel like we both will go down that rabbit hole together.
Oh, yeah.
But I have to stop
It will
myself.
no longer be coffee with curriculum. It'll be like dinner and
Yeah, I
curriculum, or
know,
something
right?
like that.
Listen, like, let's not do coffee. We got to do brunch. We got to go.
Brunch and
Gotta go to
lunch and
dinner, and then
dinner.
we go to
Yeah.
the
So it's,
restaurant,
yeah, yeah.
because it's just so much. But literally everything you touched upon is is crucial. I'm thinking, like, um and I'm not trying to take the question away from you. It just, what
No.
you said made me think about something else when it
Yeah.
comes to, like, the initiatives, because a lot of times it's just like, okay, we do know these issues, and saying it out loud in bullet point form, like you so eloquently did, like,
Hmm.
it's systematic equality, residential,
Hmm.
segregation, boom, boom, boom. Okay, now that we know it, but, like, what am I supposed to do with that, and how do we move forward when things are so deeply rooted in this country? It's like, oh, what do I do? And I think when there's an involvement with our communities collectively, like, I feel like that might help. So, the question is, like, looking at initiatives, I think maybe working with um your local government offices, like your mayor's
Yeah.
office, and
I did
working.
write that down.
Did you really? Yes.
Yeah, I did write that down.
You know what I mean?
What one of my in high school, I volunteered in one of my first jobs coming out of high school into college during the summer, was working for the town. So I worked with the local congresswoman and superintendents for the town. Um, and we did a lot of community engagement programs, whether it be back to school. My church did a lot of back to school events, handing out backpacks and and
Mm.
and what you call it, and school supplies and things of that nature. So really community, parent workshops, community partnerships. I know for some parents it really is hard, especially with their schedule, but really speaking with the teachers, going to a PTA session, really kind of seeing where we can target and get some of this information from, because um it's hard. We could talk about the problems all day, really, because we
Right,
know the problems, but we
right,
want to be able to talk about those. And it's just deeper than saying, oh, okay, we can have these community engagements, or it's deeper. For example, one of the things that I said was curriculum reform. So making sure
right.
that the students get the textbooks. So one district doesn't get one set of textbooks and we're using textbooks from 10 years ago, making sure
Right.
we get those. That is a part of curriculum reform, getting those materials, getting the proper textbooks, advocating for proper teaching material, advocating for technology, because in one school you got a whole technology classroom, and in another school kids
Don't
have got
barely
to share
have
iPads.
Wi-Fi.
They don't have Wi-Fi, and kids got to share iPads and laptops just to get in the circle, right? So everybody, you're sitting down, there's what, 3 or 4 kids to a table in the classroom, and it's one laptop per table, because they don't have that computer room or accessibility that other residential segregation classrooms and districts have. So we want to talk about a lot of the things that I talk about are great, but I think the main thing is the advocacy, because if you don't have the advocacy, then none of this,
Yep.
it's for naught, really. So we really have to, the teacher training and the professional development, we have to advocate for those, especially when you're talking about in the communities that don't have as much support. We need to bring in people with different languages. So when we're talking about, especially with our students with learning disabilities, we want to bring in a Spanish speaking teacher. We want to bring in a Spanish speaking trainer.
Right.
In that, and that's comparable in that community. And making sure that they get the training and how to, now we're not teaching them Spanish, but at the same time, how are we going to meet the needs? Because there's also a cultural difference there, right? So on top of a language difference, there's a cultural difference. We need to be able to see the cultural difference as a teacher, and making sure that those students with those disabilities feel at home. So it's very strategic. It's deeper than it really is. It's very strategic, but also advocacy has to be the number one drive in making sure that these initiatives get started and completed. Because if we don't advocate, and I'm talking about us as teachers, but also getting that support from our superintendent, our administrators, our higher ups, however we want to call them, they have to come alongside us and advocate for that, especially in our brown and Black communities. Because if there's no advocacy, then we can yell community engagement all day, every day, and it's not going to get done.
Natalia, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. It was I have pages of notes as we talked about, because I was just like, okay, this is important, this is important, this is important.
Coffee and curriculum, gonna have to do brunch.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do brunch.
That's all I have to, yes.
Yeah, but it was very refreshing, just kind of putting and some of these things are my own personal struggles too. So, and just putting them out there, and just reminding people of how we can just be better, but also just how we can be more teachable. We need to be, our goal is we're focusing on the student. So we need to just, as teachers, curriculum builders, we need to be a little bit more teachable as to how we can best target our students and listen to them, listen to what they're saying.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on. So for tomorrow's session, we are going to be talking about caffeinated collaboration, building curriculum communities. We are going to have Dr. Keisha White, and we're also going to have Breanna Jones on as well. So thank you so much, and I hope to speak to you very, very soon.
Thank you. Bye.